It's just a good game. Should be.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good one. But welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, Clash of Cultures family. Episode 19 of our live series, previewing and recapping games.
I didn't know
Um,
you
I-
were counting, right? You like, is this just 19th live?
this is our 19th live, yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. Hey, damn.
Um, but yeah, like I said, this is gonna be our 19th episode. Obviously, we're recapping today. We previewed 2 days ago, recapping week 8 of all of college football matchups. A lot of good games, obviously.
Yeah.
A lot of upsets, like I predicted. Not as many as I predicted, but definitely some upsets to talk about.
Did you actually pick any of the upsets? I know you.
No,
You were very good.
I didn't pick Minnesota over Iowa. I did not pick North Carolina to lose. No, I did not pick any of the upsets.
Yeah, crazy. I don't think I did either.
And crazy because I picked a few upsets, and there were other upsets. So that's crazy. But I mean, let's get right into it. Obviously, the game of the week: Ohio State, Penn State. What is your kind of takeaway for Ohio State and how they look this week?
Man, that defense was dominant. I know the score says 20-12, but I don't think that game was that close. Obviously, if you guys watch the game, you know Penn State got a late, I guess, kind of garbage time touchdown. That defense, that secondary was nasty. For most of the day, Penn State was 0 for 15 on third down conversions. They finally got a third down conversion really late in the game. And then Marvin Harrison is just simply unguardable, right? We talk so much about King and being a great corner, and I'm not saying he's not, but Marvin Harrison literally and simply just went off and even had kind of a slow start. But you know, he's tough. Probably needs to be in that Heisman conversation, as I kind of mentioned in the Discord yesterday. Especially with the quarterbacks in college football all kind of having rough weeks. And I'm not saying he hasn't had some either, but he probably needs to be in that conversation. This was a great Penn State defense as well. No knock to Penn State's defense.
That is no cap, Edgar. That is no cap. I don't even know. I didn't even know that was his nickname. They said that every
Maserati Marv.
Yeah, I did not know that was his nickname.
Yeah. They really
that's the first time I've heard it, and like I heard it over and over. And I'm like, what are they even talking about? And then I realized what they were saying.
That must be like NIL tied or something. Somebody's getting money for that. But yeah, man, good game. I don't think it was as close as the score. Looks like Penn State is still little brother. And that's concerning for them and James Franklin. Especially to go ahead. At some point, you got to get over the hump. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts on that game, it was what we thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be higher scoring. But it was still a one possession game at the end of it. I know Penn State scored late to kind of make it look more respectable. But it was still a good game nonetheless. I think Ohio State, it's hard to say because we haven't seen Michigan against Penn State. We haven't seen them against a common opponent. But I mean, they have two very good wins now in Notre Dame and Penn State. It's hard to not give them credit at this point in the season. They passed 2 of their 3 tests for the year with one more left over in Michigan. I think it's going to be a very interesting scenario if Penn State is able to beat Michigan. It's going to be a very interesting scenario because Penn State, I don't think is a bad team at all. I think they had a chance to beat Ohio State, so I think they have a chance to beat Michigan. Michigan's still my favorite in the Big Ten, but I want to see how they look against Penn State because if Penn State is able to beat them and then Michigan beats Ohio State, you have a 3-way tie kind of thing. I don't even know how it works. So we'd have to see because you can't even really go off common opponents at that point. So it's going to be interesting to see how it works out. But just to kind of move on to the next game, a game that I didn't think was going to be close was the Oklahoma UCF game. I know we talked a lot about close games this year, this week. I did not expect this one to be a close game, though. I know Dylan Gabriel had a pretty good performance, 250, 3 touchdowns and a pick. But Plumlee as well had 250 and 2 touchdowns. It's just kind of weird. I knew that Oklahoma struggled against SMU, and I said that in the last live. Like, I just feel like some teams play to other teams, like to their opponents, like level or standard. And that's exactly what we got in this game. I don't think UCF is Hawaii, but they're not on the level of Oklahoma. So it's kind of crazy to see a 2-point win. They almost lost, but a 2-point win. And, they're still in position to, make it to the Big 12 title game. They still have to play Kansas, which is not going to be a cakewalk. They're opening up as a 10-point favorite after the bye week. I'm sorry, after the bye week next week. And then you have Oklahoma State, which is a rivalry, West Virginia, BYU, and TCU. I think they're going to probably end up dropping one of those games. I didn't have them going undefeated. I had them going 11-1. Still
Yeah.
going to the Big 12 title game. But I think if they go undefeated, there's serious conviction that this team could be in the playoff, which is kind of crazy. I mean, I know I said it in the offseason, but I said it, but I didn't really believe it. Like I knew that Brent Venables was going to turn it around from 6-6, but I didn't think they were going to be, 6-7-0 through the first 8 weeks of college football. I mean, it's kind of crazy, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, and especially, and again, I know that we'll talk about this later, but when you talk about Lincoln Riley and USC with 2 losses, so the fact that they were able to turn this around, and I think you have to give Brett Venables a pass for last year just because of the situation he took over. While Oklahoma is a powerhouse in college football, right? Really one of the blue bloods. To lose your quarterback, really 2 quarterbacks, because Spencer Rattler and Caleb Williams and a bunch of other players, and really didn't have the opportunity or the time to refill that cupboard. It was going to be a bad year. It was just set up to be a bad year last year. But now that, and then Dylan Gabriel gets hurt last year a little bit. Now that he's been able to kind of get his system, get his program situated the way he would want to, I think he's showing that they're going to be a force. But yeah, I'm shocked by this game. I'm shocked by that 2-point conversion play. The pass, the double pass. I think UCF played a heck of a game. All due respect to my boy Jace Wheeler. They played a heck of a game, had a true chance to win this game based off of a 2-point conversion, and picked a weird 2-point conversion play. I wish, just as a college football fan, that this game got to go into overtime so we could have seen that.
Definitely. The next game I want to talk about, I mean, I don't really want to talk about the Air Force Navy game too much. I know they won by 11.
Yeah.
They were supposed to win that game, I think, by a little bit more than that. Did exactly what I thought was going to happen. I thought they were going to run the ball. I know they had a huge pass play. I'm not sure if you saw it. It was
They had 1 big 80.
90 yards or something crazy. They ran the ball for 137 yards. Navy only had 20 yards rushing. So Navy did hold them to under their average. And then 2 turnovers for Navy, 1 turnover for Air Force. Air Force got the job done 17-6. But moving on to the next game, the game that I thought was going to be an upset pick, the Washington State versus Oregon game. Washington State lost by 14. Was a close game until the second half. It was 17-13 at halftime. I thought Washington State would be able to pull it off. I mean, even at halftime, I had confidence in how the game was looking. Cam Ward had nearly 450 yards and a touchdown with another 30 yards on the ground. So he played well. Obviously, not well enough to win. But I think Oregon has a little bit better team than Washington State does. And I was kind of just going on a limb by saying Washington State will win this game. I know they beat Oregon State earlier in the year, so I thought they could get the job done against Oregon. I think Oregon is another team that I wouldn't – I know you said that they can make the playoffs earlier in the year. I wouldn't be surprised because I think they've passed every test. And I'm going to say they even passed the test against Washington. Yes, they lost by the game-winning field goal, but it's still in the college game day against another top 5 team, and you hung in there and played good football. So, I mean, I like what I saw out of Oregon. They didn't lose by – or Washington State didn't lose by 31, and I knew that wasn't going to happen. But I'm not sure. I think Oregon plays USC next week, if I'm not mistaken. Or they play Utah. So I expect that game to be really good. But what did you kind of take away from that game?
Yeah, I think you saw and all love to Bo Nix, had a great game, almost 300 yards. But Oregon really won this game on the ground. Bucky Irvin went over 100. Jordan James went over 100. So 2 backs over 100 yards. And I think one of the unsung heroes of this Oregon season has been Bucky Irvin. He's been playing ball, and I don't think he gets enough love or talked about enough. I think Oregon's a really good team. I picked them to win the Pac-12, and then kind of after seeing what I saw from Washington last week, I think neutral field. I think they'll be able to pull it off against Washington. I think that's the game that's kind of setting up. No disrespect to Utah, who's very much in the hunt as well. But I think the way the Pac-12 is kind of setting up is that it looks like it's going to be Oregon versus Washington in the Pac-12 championship. So in a rematch, and I am excited to see it.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one for sure. I'm not going to fully count USC out, though. I know they have 2 losses. They still have to play them both times.
I am.
Well, if USC beats Oregon, they would have the tiebreaker over them. So that's the
I
only
am
reason
fully
why.
counting USC out.
We'll see. Like I said, we'll see. I'm not gonna fully count them
I am
out.
full. I am
What's Utah?
fully.
What's Utah's record?
Utah has one loss, so they
Yeah,
only lost one game.
so even them, I don't think we can count Utah out
The,
either.
the hard
Go ahead.
part with Utah is just simply that offense is not good, but the defense is so nasty. Looks like they're getting a little better. It looks like they're playing a little better. Obviously, against USC's defense, where me and you could probably go for 100 apiece. It looked like it was coming together a little bit more than maybe in previous weeks, but that Utah offense has struggled. If they can get it together, that defense is crazy, and I wouldn't be shocked if they were able to pull off an upset against either Oregon or Washington.
So the only kind of problem I'm having with I guess penciling in the Washington Oregon matchup again is there's, like I said before, there's so many good teams in the Pac-12 still. There's 3 1-loss teams in Oregon State, Oregon, and Utah, and then 2-loss UCLA, 2-loss USC. So even if we want to put USC and UCLA on the kind of the back burner, you still have Oregon State, who plays both Washington and Oregon. You have Utah, who plays both Washington and Oregon, and then you have USC, who plays both Washington and Oregon. I don't see Washington going undefeated. I don't see any team going undefeated in the Pac-12, and I don't see Oregon winning out either, because they have such a tough schedule. Not because they're a bad team, but I think they could lose to Utah on the road, and I think they could lose to either USC or Oregon State at home. I think both those teams are capable of winning. I think they're going to be favored in every game. But I also think, like I said, just the remaining schedule they have is so tough that I could see them losing one. And like I said, we still have the Utah 1 loss. We still have Oregon and Oregon State with 1 loss. I would say the odds are that Oregon and Washington are going to rematch in the Pac-12 title game. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was an Oregon State or a Utah. Utah's been there the last 2 years, silenced the doubters both times. They could do it again this year, even without Cam Rising. I think the defense is so good that they're capable of doing it. But moving on to the next one, we had another really good game, Tennessee, Alabama. Obviously, I picked Tennessee to win this game. I think you picked Alabama, right?
I did.
And then Alabama won 34-20. Both quarterbacks looked kind of shaky early. I know Milroe had a pick. He had a fumble as well. They really leaned on the ground game in the second half. What were you going to say?
I don't think Milton looked well. They had some red zone issues, but I don't think he looked shaky early. He actually looked halfway decent early.
Yeah. I'm just going off of kind of the key plays. I know Tennessee wasn't really able to convert on third down. They were 8 for 18. So that's almost 50%. But I feel like when it came down to the plays that mattered, they had 3 fourth down conversions that failed. I think 2, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. I know at least one of them was QB sneak. I think it might have been 2, but I know at least one of them was I don't think it was a tush push. I think it was just a QB sneak, but he didn't get it. Oregon losing to Utah is a bad offense. To Utah, that is a bad offense. Is funny. Are you saying Utah's offense is bad? I agree. But I don't think we thought that Utah would be able to outscore USC. So I'm not going to
keep finding a way.
Yeah, they're finding ways to win. They have some good wins on their resume without their best player. So I don't think it's unrealistic to say Oregon loses to them. Oregon's only a 5.5-point favorite. They're not a 20-point favorite, and this is probably the worst offense in the Pac-12 in Utah right now. So I don't think it's crazy to say that Utah pulls it off, being only a 5-point underdog. But what did you think about the Alabama-Tennessee game?
Yeah. So, and as we kind of talked, there was just something, and maybe it's Nick Saban, but there was something going in a halftime. I just felt like Alabama was going to pull this off, and I said as much to you. And then they came out and obviously made all the correct adjustments, and literally came out and steamrolled Tennessee. Tennessee, I don't know that they got a first down the entire second half, and I'm sure they did, but it looked like the tale of two halves. Tennessee went into the half. I think they were winning 20-7, and then lost 27-0 in the second half. So yeah, just a tell of two halves. You're starting to see Jalen Milroe get a little bit of confidence, and like I said, I think Alabama's starting to figure out what he can do. Really playing to his strengths. This Alabama team, when they are clicking, can be a problem. And they are by no means, and I know they're 11th, but they are no means out of this playoff picture, especially if they can beat LSU and beat Georgia.
I agree. Moving on to our next one. We need to give this team some love. I know JB is not in here, but Missouri, big win over South Carolina.
Yeah.
Obviously, I picked Mizzou to lose that game. I'm not sure who they play next week. I hope it's Georgia because I want to see them play against Georgia already. They have a bye week and then they play Georgia. So they play Georgia the day we go to the Notre Dame Clemson game. I'm assuming that game's going to be the game day game. I don't see a world where it's not. I don't think Georgia got one this year yet. Have they?
Yeah, I don't know. And I mean, we'd have to look at the rest of the games that week. I don't know what other games are that week.
Alabama, LSU, USC, Washington,
Clemson,
Notre Dame. The only problem is Alabama, Texas had one, and Washington, Oregon had one. And I don't think Georgia or Mizzou has had one yet. So I would assume that they give it to them. And it would be for the first place spot in the that division in the SEC. So I would be surprised if they didn't get it. But I'm looking forward to that one. But yeah, I mean, Missouri definitely. I wouldn't say they're a threat to win the SEC, but I really want to see how they look against Georgia. If they're able to beat Georgia, I would be so happy. And I mean, obviously, JB would be ecstatic. That would be awesome. Like I said, I'm not a Missouri hater. I just didn't know anything about them in the beginning of the year. So obviously, obviously now
team, I think it's literally caught everybody by surprise.
Yeah, definitely. But what is your thoughts on them and that win over South Carolina?
Yeah, so it is hard because, like you said, this isn't a team I haven't broke down yet. I haven't really watched a lot of, but they keep finding ways to win. I keep picking against them. They keep finding ways to win. So at some point in time, I feel like, hey, I got to jump on the bandwagon and put some, like you said, put some respect on their name. So yeah, I'm very excited to see them play Georgia. This Missouri team is a problem. 7 wins is a 7-win season, right? We didn't even pick them to win 7 games for the year, and I can't remember what my prediction was, but probably not much more than that. And they've won 7 games in their first 8. And then in the game they lost, the LSU game was still a very, very competitive game. So yeah, I want to see how high they can take this.
Yeah. I'm going to skip over the Tulane game, but I do want to talk about the Minnesota-Iowa game. The fact that there was a 30-point over-under and they scored 22 points is crazy. I'm not sure if you saw it, but they returned a punt with like a minute left. They called it back.
Yes. Yeah. So, and when you look at that play, because they're saying the guy was waving his arm, but he wasn't waving it like high. He was waving like almost like weird call, probably something where they need to look at that rule. But also I think they said something like Iowa had like either 2 or 20 yards in the second half. Like Iowa has to do something about this offense. That defense is playing their hearts and souls out, keeping them in games. I mean, you hold a team to 12 points as a top 25 team, you're supposed to win that game. So they I don't know if they need to get somebody in there to work that offense, a new coordinator, maybe Garrett Rowley or somebody.
That was a good one. Please shake him.
But they need to do something. I'm not gonna lie. They need to do something about this offense.
Moving on to the next game, we have Texas against Houston. Another game where Texas, again, just like Oklahoma, kind of played down to the level of competition, only won by 7. Kind of interesting to see that. I said this in the beginning of the year. I feel like in the Big 12, everybody is capable of just beating each other. That's just what it comes down to. Yeah. Texas beat Alabama. They struggled with SMU. They struggled with Houston. I'm sure they're going to struggle with another team down the stretch and the rest of their 5 games remaining, whatever the case may be. So it's kind of weird to me, but nonetheless, they got the job done. If you keep winning,
quick note though, Guinea Pig, you said refs robbed Houston. I didn't watch the game. I seen the highlights, but what happened in that game? The play where I know what he's talking about now. The 3rd down, they gave the ball to the running back. It was like 3rd and 1. It looked like he got it. They spotted it short, and then they didn't get it on fourth down late in the game. I did see that. Yeah, I was shocked by this. I did not think that Houston would be able to play with Texas. The quarterback for Houston, man, had a heck of a game. I think literally like his career game, and I'm sure as a player in the state of Texas, and I'm not sure where he's from, but I'm sure as a player in the state of Texas, when you play Texas, maybe he wasn't recruited by them. His name is Devon Smith. Maybe he wasn't recruited by them. He went off 378 yards, 3 touchdowns, did have 1 interception, but man, he played great. Quinn Ewers got hurt, so that's something obviously that we're going to probably have to pay attention to going forward. For a week that didn't have a bunch of marquee games, there ended up being a bunch of good games that we did not anticipate.
Yeah. Speaking of another one of those good games we didn't anticipate, Virginia beat North Carolina. 1-5 team. Tony Elliott, we talked about this. I'm not going to say I disrespected him last episode, but I was like, he hasn't done anything with that team after leaving Clemson. Yeah. I know they had the tragedy like I talked about before, but I don't think anybody saw this coming. They ran all over North Carolina in the fourth quarter. I know Kobe Pace, he was a former Clemson running back. He transferred. He had 30 yards. They had 3 running backs with 60 yards. I think the running back even ran. The quarterback ran for 60 yards. That was another one of the carries. Just interesting. Obviously, Drake May threw for 350, 2 touchdowns and a pick, but did not expect Virginia to pull that off. And I think we talked about them 2 days ago. Can North Carolina make the playoffs? That effectively is out the window. We did not expect them to lose to a 1-5 worst team in the ACC. So I don't think they're going to be able to win out at this point. I think if they do, they're still not in a position to make the playoffs because they have such a terrible loss on their schedule. So going to be interesting there. But do you kind of have any takeaways from that, or?
I think it is exactly that. You lose to a 1-5 team. You're not going to make the playoffs, even if they were able to win out. They have it'd be worst loss. And they would have one of the worst losses of any teams that are even vying for position. Also, my other thing is Drake May. We kind of talk about him so glowingly. He hasn't had a great season. I know we mentioned the 347, but 50% completion percentage against a horrible team. He has his full arsenal back with Tez Walker back, and Tez Walker actually had a really good game, 11 catches, 146 yards. I am sure people, and I did not watch the game, so I'm sure people can make excuses, but I think we need to maybe re-examine Drake May as this number 1 or number 2 quarterback NFL prospect, because just based off of the numbers, especially this season.
He did play well. The last interception that he threw to lose a game, he got hit while he threw the ball.
Okay, and that's what I said. I didn't see the game.
He got hit while he threw it, so I don't think if he wouldn't have gotten hit, I don't think it was an interception. It was one of those where it was kind of like the tuck rule kind of thing, but the guy caught the ball instead.
I got you. Okay.
Fatal Jedi, what's going on? What's going on, man? I know a big win for Florida State against Duke. We're actually going to talk about that right now. We'll talk about that before we talk about Ole Miss. So, obviously Duke, big 18 win. Florida State, big 18 win over Duke, 18-point win. I think Florida State at this point should be on cruise control heading into the ACC title game. I don't think there's a team on the schedule. The last team they have to worry about is Miami. Obviously, Miami beating Clemson yesterday. But other than that, you have Pitt and Wake Forest. So I would say it's safe to say Florida State's probably going to go undefeated. I do think that Florida can be a tough test at the end of the year, though. I did have Florida State losing that game at Florida. Florida's obviously a 5-2 team, so that's still a trap game for them. But I'm pretty sure Florida State is going to be at this point in the ACC title game with a really good chance to make the playoffs, assuming they are undefeated. I think they get in. Florida State, I would say, is back at this point. A good season last year, and then to couple it with the good season this year, so can't really call it a fluke anymore.
Let me say though, if you watch this game, Florida was losing until Riley Leonard went out. Now, obviously, if you guys watch, they scored 21 points in the fourth quarter to kind of pull away. But that was without Duke starting quarterback. The backup came in, went 1 for 6, really did nothing. And not that Riley Leonard was having a great game, but I think he was kind of keeping things under control. Heron Bellin, I think is his name, came in, went 1 for 6, and at that point, Florida State really took off. Now, maybe they would have did that with Riley Leonard in the game as well, but when Riley Leonard went out, if I'm not mistaken, Duke was still winning this game. When we talk about now Duke deservingly is in the conversations with the best teams in college football. When
Florida
we
State.
talk about, I'm sorry, who did I say?
You said Duke.
Oh, now Florida State is in the conversations with the best teams in college football. I'd like to see a little more, especially than what I saw in this game. But all credit due, because I think a lot of teams had a down week, and they still beat a top 25 team by 18 points.
Yeah. Nicholas says Duke is a good team, very well coached and experienced team. I agree with that. They have a really good defense, a good secondary. Fatal Jedi said Leonard doesn't play defense. He doesn't play defense, but I think when your offense plays so bad, field positioning is a big thing. So
and then if I'm giving the ball back to you and you're getting the ball more than you would have, that does affect the game. And again, I didn't, nothing I said was being disrespectful to Florida State. I'm just saying at this point, Florida State has a number of good wins. LSU, Clemson, now Duke. So yeah, they're deservingly in that top 4 playoff, not even conversation. I think they are clearly one of the teams, if the playoff rankings came out, that would be in. But like I said, I would like to see a little bit more from them if we're expecting them to be able to beat a Georgia, a Ohio State, a whoever is coming out of the Pac-12. Not to say they can't, because they definitely have the players. I want to see them kick that on.
But kind of going back, I know we talked about Florida State because Fatal Jedi popped in here. I wanted to talk about them while he was here. But Ole Miss Auburn, did not think this game would be close either. Ole Miss getting the job done against Auburn. I did not watch this game. There was just too many games going on. Peyton Thorne only threw for 100 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Judkins had 125 yards of touchdowns. Nicholas said, well, from a Clemson fan, you could take our name out of being a good team consideration. Yeah, tell me about it, man. I don't even want to talk about them right now. Nicholas, how did you feel about Cade Klubnik pulling the ball from Will Shipley on that last play? I watched the post-game press conferences, and it wasn't a read option. He just decided to go rogue and be a vigilante and try to be a hero.
Now, when you look at the play, in all fairness to Cade, when you look at the play, they were crashing. But
it's weak side though. It's weak side.
Yeah, if they were crashing so much that if Cade was just more athletic, he should have been able to outbeat the end or linebacker or whoever the last man was who had flank to the corner. The guy just literally was crashing, saw Cade had the ball, and then outran him to the corner.
But the problem is that wasn't a play call. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree.
If it was a read option and he pulled it, like if he was supposed to have the option and he pulled it and ran, I wouldn't be mad. I'm mad that there was no option and he pulled it. Like you went rogue. I'd rather have lost on the play call of, okay, it was going to Will Shipley, put the ball in our best runner's hands. If he gets stopped, he gets stopped. But no, you want to pull the ball. We're not talking about them. They're not a top 25. We're not talking about them because I'm gonna get pissed off again.
Just really, you bro. And I want to fill time as Nicholas. Well, because it's gonna take him a while to type out his answer. So I want to just kind of fill some time. We might as well talk about the game.
Nicholas, if you're typing, we'll revisit that. But okay, here we go.
There you go.
Bad idea, but our O-line is so soft that cupcakes look strong now. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's a wide receiver room though. That's what everybody else likes to say.
I think it's the wide receiver room.
But moving on, Utah beating USC. I would say, honestly, this might even be an upset, even though they were ranked higher than them. I think it would still be considered an upset in all reality because I don't think Utah, again, we talked about their offense, had the offensive firepower to beat them, but they were able to do it. Walk-off field goal to hand the Trojans their second loss. Obviously, USC is out of playoff contention now. They could still make it to a respectable bowl game, but that's obviously not what USC is trying to do this year. That's not what Lincoln Riley is trying to build. In his second year, they've underachieved. I think you have the best player in college football, and you've underachieved 2 years in a row. And I think we're gonna having the conversation heading into next year. Well, USC would have beaten. Let's say they're going to say USC would have beaten UCLA, but they didn't have anything to play for, so they didn't put their best foot forward. Kind of like the Tulane thing. So I think that's what's going to end up happening. I think USC is going to lose another game. Are you frozen? No, you're not. I think if USC loses another game, they're going to say, well, they didn't have anything to play for, so it doesn't really matter. Like they didn't even really try. So I just think that's a bogus cop out. Because when any other team loses, there's no excuse for it. So I get that, Caleb Williams is going to go to the NFL and have probably a great NFL career. But at the end of the day, he's on USC right now. So unless he's going to sit out, there's no excuse if they lose another game and he's playing. It can't be because, well, they're not trying because they can't go win a national championship. If he plays, then he plays. That's the way I see it.
Do you think if you were Caleb Williams or his advisor, would you recommend that he sits out the rest of the season?
No, because then I think that questions like his character, I think. And I think NFL teams value that. And I also don't like, so let's say he loses back-to-back games and then he just doesn't play anymore. I think it gives him a bad rap. Like it just makes you look like a punk. Like you lose,
a quitter. Like
you lose and you left your team for dead, basically. Like the captain jumped off the ship. That's the way I see it. So I don't think if
now,
I
mean,
I
but
don't
you're talking about possibly, or let's say he loses one more. You're talking about possibly playing for nothing and putting yourself in injury when you're looking like a surefire top 1 or 2 pick. Let's say they lose another game.
I agree, but you could get injured if you were undefeated. So I mean, I just don't like because if they never would have lost, there would be no talks of him sitting out. So now,
that's a fact.
So now you're a loser and you quit on your team. So I just think so when you lose in the NFL and your team is 1-6, are you going to sit the rest of the year so you don't get hurt? So it's just like that's kind of corny to me. So I hope he plays because I think he could kind of rewrite the narrative. There has been a player to win the Heisman without going undefeated. So it's not like it's impossible. Yeah, it's not impossible. I don't think he's going to get it. But I think if he finishes strong, if he beats Washington, if he beats Oregon, it's not impossible for him to get the nod to go to New York. I don't think it's going to happen, but to just quit on your team and leave them, I don't think that should happen. And I think there's a lot of outside noise, like with him. I'm sure it was fake news, but like him trying to own a team and all types of crazy stuff. And like I said, I'm sure it's fake news, but there's just too much outside stuff that's going on. I think NIL has a lot to do with it. They're not losing 5 games. I don't think that's going to happen.
I firmly believe they're going to be 8-4, though.
I think 8-4 is probably their floor. I don't think they're gonna lose more than 4 games unless you say they play a team. I know we're not good, but if you play a team like Clemson in a bowl game and you can lose to a team like Clemson, I don't think they're going to lose in a bowl game to a team like Iowa State.
So if you count it, because I think they'll lose to both Oregon and Washington, and then if you count a bowl game, it is possible that I would say now their floor is 5 games. Their floor is 5
with the bowl game. I agree with the bowl game. But like I said, it also depends because I think if USC is 8-4 in the Pac-12, you're not playing against another good team in the bowl game. Like you're probably playing, the 7th best team in a conference because you're going to be like the 6th best team.
I think some bowl game just out of star power, assuming Caleb Williams is willing to play the bowl game, would still want them. That's still USC still a big name.
So Doug Fan said they lose to Washington and Oregon. They don't play Oregon State. They do play UCLA, but they don't play Oregon State. Christian said FSU didn't play a good game. Should have been worse.
Christian, say what up, Christian?
Are you saying it should have been worse for Florida State or for Duke? I'm confused with that one. But moving on to our next one, kind of wrapping up the talks. We had really the last game I guess we talk about is Washington surviving against Arizona State. This great team that's just levels above every other Pac-12 team almost lost to the 2nd or 3rd worst team in the Pac-12, scored a touchdown with like 3 minutes left to win the game, or scored a touchdown with like 5 minutes left and then kicked a field goal, I think, to go up by 8.
Yeah, they had and the score was, I think, a pick 6. It wasn't even the offense.
They were down 7-3 the entire game.
Going into the fourth, yeah.
So I think it's just, again, it's funny because we just put this team on a pedestal for beating Oregon, and we said, well, USC has no chance at beating Washington. Arizona State almost beat Washington, and you can't tell me USC is worse than Arizona State. And I get styles make fights. Styles make fights. I get that. But Arizona State also was on the road. So I think that, I mean, Arizona State went to Washington and was competing with Washington. And Arizona State is not a good team.
So what I will say is, I think because of brand, Washington will be up for the USC game. Now, so if your question is, can USC beat Washington? Yes. Do I think they will? No, because I think Washington will play better against USC than they played against Arizona State. I'm sure the Washington players coming off that Oregon game saw Arizona State's record as well, just like we saw it. I had this game closer because I thought it was somewhat of a trap game. Because I think coming off the emotional high of the Oregon game, Washington wasn't going to be at their. Now, when I say closer, I had it still high scoring. But yeah, a shocker of a game, but I don't think this is indicative of anything in the future, as I think Washington will play up for the games they need to play up for. And this is just a game they played down because they probably thought that they could just walk in here and beat Arizona State by just showing up.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, that's the reason why I don't think there's going to be a Pac-12 team that's going to be undefeated, because I think Arizona State's not even a good team. But Washington still has to play. The rest of their 4 games are all losable games, in my opinion. They're all losable. Yeah. Washington, to me, is not some juggernaut that just won't lose. Like, they're not Georgia. And, I mean, I know Georgia is not what we know what they were in the past. But, like, last year we all knew how good Georgia was. And, like, there was no time where I'm like, yeah, they could lose this game. There was no – except Tennessee. And they handled Tennessee. But I think when you look at a team like Washington, you still play USC, Utah, Oregon State, and Washington State. Those are all losable games. Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if they lost any. And I think same thing with Oregon. They have some losable games. USC has some losable games. And that's why I don't think there's going to be an undefeated team. And I do think if there's a – go ahead.
Yeah, I would say I am at a point now where I'm softening my position on guaranteeing a Pac-12 team gets in.
No. You can't do that. You can't do that.
I'm softening. I'm coming off of the guarantee. I now just strongly believe. I no longer guarantee. I strongly believe.
So I think here's where we are right now. I think the only way a Pac-12 team gets in is Washington has to run the table. There's no way they can lose a game. The reason why, let's say Washington
team gets in.
Well, so here's the problem. If Washington runs the table, and let's say they're 12-0 heading into conference championship week, then they lose to Oregon in the conference championship. They're 1-1, and Oregon has the conference championship over them. So then you have, hypothetically, an undefeated team in the SEC in Georgia. We'll just call them, just hypothetically, we'll say Georgia wins it. Let's say Michigan or Ohio State wins it. Let's say Florida State wins it. That's already 3. That's 3 undefeated conference champions. Not to say it's going to happen, but I'm just saying in that world. And then you still have an Oklahoma or a Texas. So that's where it's like, I don't think it's a guarantee. Or you have to have Oregon run the table and beat Washington again. I think that's the only way. I don't think Utah gets in by running the table. And I don't think Oregon State gets in by running the table, or whoever the other one-loss team is.
And obviously we'll see how this plays out. I could see a situation where the hard thing becomes, and I've seen this question, what do you think happens if Alabama runs the table, Texas runs the table, and now they are both vying for the 4th spot?
Well, Texas will get it. Texas will get it.
But remember, Alabama, 1 name, right? And then 2 is coming off beating the number 1 team in the nation.
But the problem is going to be Texas is going to be 12-1 with the win over Alabama. Alabama is going to be 11-2
in Alabama.
Yeah, so
why would Alabama be 11-2?
Oh, I'm sorry, they're undefeated, right? Well, so I'm down. They have 1 loss. Well, the problem would be, they have the same record, but they have the head-to-head over them. So I don't think there will be a way that could happen.
Because what I think is going to happen is, the way I see this playing out is it's going to be a conversation of 3 1-loss, possibly 3 1-loss conference champions. Not that I think, or 2 1-loss conference champions. Not that I think that that Alabama is going to beat Georgia. But I would tell you that if Alabama was playing Georgia this week, I'd call it a toss-up.
You know what I just thought about would be actually crazy? I think we could see a world where an SEC team doesn't get in this year.
Yeah.
Because
Well, the hard
wait,
part
wait,
is
wait, hear me out. LSU runs the table and finishes 10-2, and then beats Georgia in the SEC title game, and they're 11-2 now, right?
the question becomes: does Georgia still get in?
Well, because then if you have a undefeated Florida State, and let's say an undefeated Washington, and undefeated Ohio State, then it would be a loss of a Georgia losing the SEC title over a undefeated Oklahoma or a one-loss Texas, who won the conference championship.
The bigger story becomes, again, imagine in that same situation. I'm going to take LSU out of it because the 2 losses hurts them. But then you say, what happens if Alabama beats Georgia and they have 1 loss and now they're the SEC champion?
Then I think they would get in. They would get in though.
But you still got to, what if there's a one loss Texas team? Right. So you now have possibly, and this is why I say, this is what I think you're going to see chaos at the end of the season, because you may see a situation where you have a 1-loss Pac-12 champion Oregon, a 1-loss Big 12 champion Texas, a 1-loss SEC champion Alabama, all vying for 1 spot, and how that committee kind of factors that out. And I'm going to be honest in that if Oregon was able to run the table and for the rest of the season, I think Oregon would have probably the most impressive record and one of the better losses.
The crazy thing is there's probably going to be, like, at the end, realistically, there's probably going to be like 5 1-loss teams. Because I mean, you have a team like Louisville, who, I mean, nobody's talking about, but they're probably going to be 10-2 or 11-1. You have Florida State, who's probably going to be undefeated. Michigan or Ohio State are probably going to either have 1 loss or undefeated.
Well, one of them is going to have 1 loss.
Exactly.
One of them's probably going to be undefeated, assuming that Michigan beats Penn State, which I think they're going to be the favorite. I think you're looking at a situation where they're both going to go into that game undefeated. They would both drum Iowa, but whoever wins that game is probably going to be undefeated. But then you got another team, and imagine if it's Ohio State, you got another team with a pretty good resume.
Yeah, so as I'm looking at it right now, so obviously Georgia's undefeated, Michigan, Ohio State have to play each other. Florida State is undefeated, Washington's undefeated, Oklahoma's undefeated. Then you have 1 loss: Oregon, Alabama, Texas, Penn State, Oregon State, Ole Miss, Utah, Mizzou, North Carolina, Louisville, undefeated Air Force, 1 loss Tulane, and then undefeated James Madison.
Let me say this. There's no way Air Force is getting in, and that's
all due respect. Yeah. But I mean, if Air Force finishes undefeated, they're going to be in the top 12. They're going to be in the top 12 though, and that's going to be a New Year's. And I still think that's respectable though. Just looking at. Because, I mean, I think Tulane's going to finish with 1 loss, and I think Air Force is going to finish with maybe 1 loss. But if not, they'll be undefeated. And that's still going to put them over other teams. So, again, I mean, even if the scenario we say Ohio State or Michigan is undefeated and they get in, Florida State is undefeated and they get in. So they're 2 locks at that point. If we say Florida State and Ohio State are both undefeated.
So if you were predicting the ACC championship right now, what 2 teams do you predict to be in it?
It's probably going to be Florida State and Louisville, because Louisville plays nobody, and that's why I said in the beginning of the season,
and then Florida State's season, and I heavily favor Florida State in that game.
So
Florida State finishes 12-0.
Duke plays Louisville this week. So if Louisville beats Duke, they play Miami as well. If they're able to beat Miami and Duke, they're going to finish 11-1. Well, they play Kentucky, but they would finish with a 1 loss. 1 loss inside the ACC, so they're going to get in. So I think Florida State would be in being undefeated. I think Ohio State or Michigan will be in being undefeated. So that's already 2 spots taken. But then you're going to have Washington, who is undefeated now but could have 1 loss. Oregon could have 1 loss. Utah could have 1 loss. Oregon State could have 1 loss. Then you have Oklahoma, who could have 1 loss or they're undefeated. You have Texas still. Then you still on the other side, you have Alabama. You have Missouri.
Maybe Georgia if they got 1
Georgia.
Loss.
There's just Penn State. I mean, maybe we'll have 2 losses at that point, but there's so many teams who only have 1 loss that I don't think, like, I would not be surprised. And y'all can call it a hot take if you want, but I wouldn't be surprised if we don't have an SEC team in this year. I wouldn't be surprised because I think the Pac-12 champion, if it is Oregon or Washington, and they only have one loss, I think they get in over. Like the only reason why I'm saying SEC might not get one is because I firmly believe that LSU or Alabama could beat Georgia, and I think if LSU beats Alabama, and the representative, either of them, have 2 losses, and if they beat Georgia in the SEC title game, you're not getting a 2-loss SEC champion over a 1-loss Big 12,
the question
Pac-12,
becomes
or anything.
The question then becomes: does Georgia still get in? Do they fall from 1 all the way to? You remember last year TCU lost the Big 12 championship, didn't fall at all. So does Georgia fall from 1 to 5? But it was a different situation
because there were so many 2-loss teams. And that's the reason why they got in. I don't think there's going to be many 2-loss teams this year. And so Duck Fan Dane says ACC will have no undefeated teams and be left out. Who do you have beating Florida State then?
That's
because
tough. Yeah,
they've beaten LSU, Duke, and Clemson. I think at this point, if the narrative is Florida State is not a good team, at this point, I'm sorry, I hate Florida State. I hate them. But you are a hater if you're telling me that Florida State doesn't deserve to be where they are, because they've passed every test with flying colors. They obviously against Clemson they struggled, but Clemson is still a powerhouse. They're not a great team, but you go into Clemson and beat Clemson. Clemson hasn't lost at home in like 5 seasons. So you go in and beat Clemson, you beat Duke, and you beat LSU, who LSU is a top 15 team. They have arguably a top 3 roster in all of college football. You beat them on opening day, neutral site field. You can't tell me that Florida State isn't deserving of a top 4 spot. Now, if you say they lose, but even if they say, wait, am I lying?
Well,
there's no way you can say.
When we say powerhouse,
I'm not even going to get that troll.
We're not talking about one season versus. So obviously they're not having a great season, and I don't think anybody would deny that. But I think in terms of college football prowess, especially since
you can't tell me that's not a good win. Yeah,
that's
beating Clemson at home or on the road at Clemson is a huge win for anybody. It doesn't matter who you are. So I think that Florida State win is a huge win. So I also think, like I said, even if Florida State hypothetically were to drop a game in the regular season, if they win out and win the ACC, they have a real shot at getting in because they have such a good resume. I mean, by the end of the year, you're going to have at minimum 3 top 25 wins. At minimum, I don't know how many other teams are going to have 3 top 25 wins that are in the talks of a playoff other than a Pac-12 team. Because I don't think a team like Michigan or Ohio State is going to have 3 top 25 wins. I think they're only going to have 2.
Ohio State would if they beat Michigan, but they'd also be undefeated, so it wouldn't matter.
Yeah,
but they would.
I'm talking about just 1-loss teams. I'm talking about 1-loss teams.
So Michigan wouldn't because they play nobody.
Yeah, so I just think even if Florida State were to lose a game, I still think they could get into playoffs, and I don't think they're going to lose a game. So I don't.
Looking at the rest of their schedule,
unless they lose in the ACC title game.
Again, I'll be honest. I would favor them heavily over Louisville. Heavily.
So right now, they're either going to play, as it stands right this second, they're either going to play North Carolina or Louisville in the ACC title game. And I don't think Louisville can hang with them. I think North Carolina can, just because I think North Carolina has obviously a generational type quarterback in Drake May. So I think something crazy could happen. But I don't think Louisville can hang with them. I think if they played Duke again, I don't think Duke could hang with them, to be honest.
I mean, they when they turned it on Duke couldn't do anything with them.
So I think Florida State's going to get in regardless. I mean, unless they lose 2 games.
If I was placing a bet on any one team to get in, I think Florida State would be the team I place the bet on right now, even over Georgia. I think they have the easiest path to get in.
Yeah, and I think it's because of their resume. I mean, if you look at the teams they've beaten, they beat Duke, they beat Clemson, and they beat LSU. So Christian said Clemson still has great players, good coaching. Y'all can't discount them with a 4-3 record. Yeah, I mean, I just think it's trolling. That's all it is. But yeah, I think Florida State has a real shot to get in. I really want to see them play against, a team like Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia. We haven't seen Florida State in, real meaningful college football since Jameis Winston days. So I'm excited to see them play. By the way, I'm sure you already discussed them, but I told you.
Yeah, we discussed them.
Yeah, we did.
All respect to Missouri.
Yeah, Mizzou definitely looked good. Obviously they play Georgia here in a few weeks. I'm looking forward to that game. I think that's going to be the game day game. I don't see a world where it's not the game day game. Neither team has had a game day this season, so I would expect it to be the game day. And I don't think Clemson's going to get one. I was talking to Brandon though. I think that Clemson Notre Dame game is going to be a night game. The only reason why the only reason why I say that is because I know Guinea Pig said something earlier, like in the year, that Notre Dame had like 4 straight night games. So I don't think they would put that as a morning game against Clemson on the road. I know it's NBC, but I'm not sure how it works. And I know this week they have a 3:00 kickoff against whoever they play this week. I don't know who they play, but I checked. Clemson is not a top 25 this year. Play at Clemson is always hard, so I'll give them credit for that. We know Clemson is not a top 25 team. But I'm looking forward to that one.
Don't get in your feelings. Come on.
I mean, there's nothing to get in my feelings about. It's going to be a night game. Duke was beating them with the compromised QB and Leonard, and only when the backup was for a while did they take the lead. Yeah, but I mean, it's a 4-quarter game though, so we don't know what's going to happen.
I mean, obviously we talked about that, right? Like I said, I think the Florida State has a very the path is set up for them. I think all their tough games they're already passed, right? Stephen mentioned them passing tests. I think, and again, I'm not saying they got cupcakes the rest of the way, but I think their path is kind of cleared up, right? They probably look at the rest of the schedule and you got to feel pretty good about what you've done, what you've already accomplished. I think if we looked at their schedule and said, hey, these are their games where we're concerned, they're already past that point in their schedule.
Doug Van Dane, I wasn't talking about you when I said trolling. Duke was up 3 and knocking on the door until Leonard went down. Yeah. Like I said, yeah, it's my only thing is it's a 4-quarter game. We saw Clemson take control of the game, the entire game against Florida State, and Florida State won. So I understand Duke was winning, but it's a 4-quarter game, so we don't know what was going to happen at the end. And I just think Florida State's a little bit better team than Duke is. No knock to Duke because Duke has some good wins and obviously 2 close losses to 2 really good teams this year. So they're still a good team.
All right, come on, man. The Sunday night games.
I just don't think they're as good as Florida State. But that's going to wrap it up for today's recap of Week 8. We're going to go live again on Friday to recap or to preview, I should say, Week 9. I don't even know what big games there are. Georgia, Florida, Oregon, Utah, Duke, Louisville. That's pretty much it. There's not really any really good games this week, but we're still going to go live, preview the games. It's going to be fun. Thank you guys so much for sticking around with us. If you haven't already, please like the stream, hit the notification bell so you don't miss when we go live. We're going to be dropping videos all week. So make sure you guys are able to, tune into those and give us your feedback on those. We will see you guys Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Until then, peace out. Hope you guys enjoy.